Maddening mode in Fire Emblem Three Houses is poorly designed and bad, and today I wanted to make it even more miserable, so I reduced the base strength, magic, dexterity, speed, defense, resistance, and charm of all playable characters down to 0, and made 0 the cap for each of those stats, so even level ups aren't going to improve them, but temporary boosts like rallies, cooking, and class modifiers are okay. This is going to leave me with just HP and luck, two stats which aren't particularly good. As you'd expect, this is going to make my team very weak, and it's even going to remove some options for me entirely, like what happens when you use Warp with 0 magic? It's like slightly better than Reposition, and 0 Charm means I can't reclass anyone into a very good unique class around the middle of the game. These changes are going to put me at an extreme disadvantage throughout the whole game, so in order to actually beat the game, I'm going to have to use all the tools I can get. So benefits like the DLC, online, and amiibo are fair game for this run, but I'm not going to use any of the big game-breaking exploits, so no time travel or using online to obtain unintended items. Just a thing of note, at the start of this challenge, my units are going to not have a lock stat, because initially I was trying to do a harder version of this challenge, but eventually I determined that was too hard and added the lock stat back in. Anyway, this challenge was really hard and took almost 180 hours to beat, so if you enjoy, like and subscribe, it would help out a lot. Okay, let's now actually start the game, and first things first, I'm going to go with female Byleth because she can immediately recruit Sylvain on Chapter 2, who is pretty good in this run with his personal skill that boosts damage and defense. Additionally, having him recruited on Chapter 5 lets you keep the very powerful Lance of Ruin, which is obviously good because I'm going to need all the damage I can get. Moving on to the prologue, you can immediately see why this run is difficult. This one enemy is stronger than my whole team combined. Even with everyone attacking at once, using combat arts to boost power, I just barely don't have enough damage to kill this unit. So to defeat them, I needed to reset for either a crest activation or a crit, which will give the power to kill. This was just one enemy by themselves, and I was already struggling. So moving on ahead to the next enemy group, how would I even stand a chance against 3 enemies at once? Initially, I had no idea how to beat them. I just placed Byleth in a forest tile, did no damage on enemy phase, and because my damage was bad, I was forced to retreat next turn. After surviving enemy phase, I didn't have the space to run away again, and had no choice but to admit defeat, as Dimitri was one-rounded on enemy phase. A thing to note here is if you play on classic mode for this map, you game over if any of your units die. So to win, I needed a strategy that didn't sacrifice anyone, and I also needed a way to actually kill the 3 incoming units. I found a solution to one of these problems on my next attempt that beat the first unit. Here, I engaged the northern units from this tile and then retreated heading towards Geralt. Because Geralt's not playable, his stats are unchanged, so my plan here was to lure the enemies towards him so he could kill them for me. By sustaining my team with vulneraries and switching out my frontline units when one was low, I actually kind of pulled this plan off, as I managed to actually take 2 enemies down, leaving just 1 unit for me to beat. Unfortunately, my team was now heavily injured and my melee units would die to a counterattack, so I couldn't safely attack and just game overed. Next time around, I came prepared with a new plan. Like before, I lured in the 3 units with Byleth, and this time, instead of retreating south with Byleth, I headed west with her, healed with a vulnerary, and had the 3 house leaders placed to the south. The enemies are now going to head towards Byleth, targeting her because she's injured and dies in 1 hit. So if I heal her again, she'll be close to full HP and out of one-shot range. This is actually the solution, as now the enemy's targeting priority is going to change, and instead of going after Byleth because she's injured, they're going to chase after Edelgard, I think because she has the lowest avoid. This is going to make them move towards Geralt and then attack into him. Since Geralt's stats are really high, he can easily handle these 3 units and defeat them, clearing the way so the 3 house leaders could regroup with Byleth. Next, I had to figure out a way to beat the 2 thieves to the northeast, which were actually harder to deal with compared to the last group, as they wielded axes, which gave them 16 attack, high enough that they would one-round my whole team. The only way I could survive their attacks was to get lucky, so I baited them out with Byleth in a forest to maximize my odds of a dodge. This allowed Byleth to dodge their first hit, and because I positioned Claude towards the left side of the map, the other thief ran left. So this turn, I only had to beat one enemy unit, which wasn't going to be easy and would require a lot of good luck. And my first attempt did not get this luck, so I had to reset. On my next attempt that got to this point, I engaged the Axe Fighter slightly differently, as I placed Byleth one space left compared to before, which improved my odds of winning significantly, as the thief now positioned out of the forests, which obviously improved my hit and damage. After Dimitri attacked, I now had to get lucky with an Edelgard crit, which defeated this first thief. Handling the second one was a little easier, as they now will just chase after Edelgard, and I can abuse that to bait them into attacking Geralt. With that enemy defeated, Costas is now going to charge towards Byleth, and Geralt's AI is going to change, as now he'll actually start to move, so I can just hang back and let him handle the incoming units. The only enemy he will not be able to beat is Costas, as he always leaves him on just 1 HP, which obviously makes it easy for me to land the final blow and finish the chapter. Skipping ahead a little, I am going to be given the choice of picking which house to lead, and since I've already played the Black Eagles and Blue Lions on this channel before, I went with the Golden Deer this time around. Once I gained control of Byleth in the monastery, I picked up the DLC stat boosters, then did the usual monastery chores. But before continuing to chapter 1, I picked up some items from the Amiibo Gazebo, and these weren't just any items. I specifically saved and reset until I picked up some specific items of 2 pure water, 2 elixirs, and a concoction across the 5 available sparkly points. With these items in hand, I continued to chapter 1. Initially, I decided on a team of Byleth and Claude because they're force deployed, Ignat to safely attack from a distance, Hilda to boost the power of my male units with her personal skill, and Leonie for her personal skill's extra damage and defense that seemed really useful here. So useful in fact that I decided to give her the DLC HP stat booster to further improve her survivability. With my preparations complete, I now started the chapter. At first, I moved Byleth to the left to hopefully split the enemies up, and I placed everyone else just south of their starting position. After Hubert, Ferdinand, and Ash moved, I placed Leonie in range to bait in Ferdinand during the next enemy phase. With an Iron Axe equipped and her personal skill active, she can deal only 1 damage back to Ferdinand at a less than 50% chance to hit. So I'm going to need to use combat arts for more might if I want to take him down. The problem with that is with his 16 attack, he one-rounds basically my whole team at melee range, and his high 9 defense makes a weak ranged unit like Ignat's deal basically no damage. Outside of Hilda with the smash combat art that dealt like 2 damage, none of my units even had a single % chance to crit, so right now I couldn't even aim to take him down with a lucky crit. But I'm getting ahead of myself. While Ferdinand is a problem, it's going to be impossible for me to deal with him if Hubert and Ash are around to back him up. So the first step I had to take to solve this map was finding a way to split the enemies up so I could deal with them one at a time. The first step I took to figure this out is I intentionally split my team up to try to decipher who each enemy is targeting. With this plan, I guessed that Ferdinand wanted to chase Byleth, Hubert seemed to follow Ferdinand around, and Ash seemed to prioritize either Claude, Hilda, or Lorenz, which split him up from Ferdinand and Hubert, so I had an opportunity to attack him at 1 range with Hilda, and thanks to her decent HP, she could survive enemy phase. With a Tempest Lance from Lorenz and a lucky crit from Hilda, I actually dealt enough damage here to trigger his healer AI, so he didn't attack, but I wasn't safe yet, as Hilda was low on HP, which baited Ferdinand to move right. With some more attacks on player phase, I actually had enough damage to kill Ash, but this placed Lorenz in Ferdinand's range, swiftly resulting in his death and forcing me to reset. I now attempted the map for like an hour straight, and didn't really make much progress. I could sometimes take Ash down, but I still had no idea on how to handle Hubert or Ferdinand with his high defense. So I took a break, and came back to the game with a new plan, a strategy that would actually be able to take Ferdinand down. This solution required me to start a new game again, and this time pick male Byleth. On the prologue, I'm pretty much going to do the exact same strat as last time, but when Costas begins to move, I'm going to play the map slightly differently, as this time I wanted to use Geralt to break Costas' weapon, so I want to stall for as many turns as possible. Initially, I tried to do this by just hiding at the bottom left of the map, but that proved to be ineffective, as Geralt's Cantos made him move out of Costas' attack range, giving him an opportunity to slowly move up and eventually corner me. The plan that ended up working here was me just moving Byleth around this area here, which got Costas and Geralt stuck in a loop where Costas would move off this forest tile, then back to the tile to attack Geralt. Then Geralt would canter away and the loop would repeat. This allowed me to move Byleth clockwise around the map until he was around the big bunch of forests. Since Costas likes to chase after Byleth, this made Costas move into the forests and Geralt chased after him. Because of the forest's movement reduction, Geralt can't canter away anymore, and he will fight Costas on basically every turn, and since they can't deal any damage to each other, I can just watch Geralt live up to his name and break Costas' weapon. This will reduce his damage, speed, and hit enough that Byleth can now safely fight him with Edelgard's Iron Axe, and because Byleth doesn't do any damage, I can just sit here and grind Axe rank, allowing Byleth to both master Commoner for HP plus 5 and eventually learn Axe Prowess, then later the Smash Combat Art. This combat art combined with Hilda's personal skills plus 3 damage boost would allow a crit from Byleth to actually deal very good damage of 15 to Ferdinand, which should make it possible for me to defeat him. Anyway, this was all I wanted to do here, so I now ended the map with Wrath Strike. In the monastery, I now went about things slightly differently than before, as I learned that if you reset to this autosave point, you can re-roll the amount of items that show up in the Amiibo Gazebo. So with enough resets, I could guarantee that the maximum of 10 items would show up, and out of those items, I wanted 9 elixirs and 1 pure water. These aren't going to be useful immediately, but I was pretty sure I was going to need the extra healing to take out Dedue and Dimitri. Anyway, now I'm back on chapter 1. Thanks to Byleth's extra 5 HP from my efforts on the last map, I can now go for a new plan on turn 1, of placing Byleth in this forest to lure in Ferdinand, as with HP plus 5, he'll now just barely survive. Since Byleth is now low on HP, the enemies will now prioritize going for him, so I can move him to the left and be confident the 3 enemies will chase after him. This will keep my 4 other units safe and leave Hubert split apart from Ferdinand, allowing me to use a pure water to have the resistance to bait him towards my squad to the right and counterattack because of the Chalice of Beginnings. This alone wouldn't be enough to set me up to kill him without a sacrifice, but it seemed like I was on the right track. And sure enough, with a few attempts to refine my strategy, I found a way to make this plan work. Okay, this time on turn 2, I moved Byleth to this specific tile. This allows Byleth to move left for 2 consecutive turns to reach this forest tile at the same time my other team was prepared to engage Hubert. Byleth being positioned here will now change the enemy's AI target priority, and despite him being injured, they will now prioritize attacking my other squad. Now, with my other team, I want to use a pure water with Hilda and trade the pure water over to Leonie and use it to prepare for the next player phase. Now, Hubert will attack Hilda, and thanks to the Chalice of Beginnings, she will counterattack and deal 2 damage. Thanks to the Pure Water's res boost, Leonie can now safely attack into Hubert to deal 8 damage. Then Claude can use Curve Shot to deal 4 damage. Lastly, Lorenz can strike with Tempest Lance and deal lethal damage thanks to Hilda's personal skill. After healing with Hilda, I ended my turn by moving Byleth out of the forest to bait Ferdinand and Ash into moving left. Next, I'm going to move Byleth back into the forest, which will make Ash and Ferdinand now chase my other team. This sets me up to bait in Ash with Leonie on enemy phase, and I don't even have to worry about Ferdinand because Byleth can now just move out of the forest to bait him to move left. On this attempt, because of poor positioning, I couldn't immediately surround Ash to stop him from attacking, so I had to back away for a turn. Next turn, I could easily surround him and use combat arts to take him down, leaving Ferdinand as the only remaining aggressive unit. To beat him, I needed to regroup Byleth with the rest of my team, so I lured Ferdinand clockwise around this patch of forests, giving Byleth the space to move out of the forests and to the southeast to rejoin my other team. Because this was my first attempt that made it this far, the setup wasn't the best, but you can still see how I plan to win here. Okay, so I'm going to attack Ferdinand with Leonie first, then I'm going to use Smash with Byleth from the forest, as if Byleth is fully healed, he is usually able to survive Ferdinand's counterattack, and if this crit for 10 more damage, match, I can move Hilda to boost up Lorenz and have just enough power to kill. Obviously, this is going to take a lot of attempts to happen since Byleth's crit rate is pretty low, but eventually I will be able to crit Ferdinand here, allowing me to kill him. With the first enemy group defeated, I now had to move up and face Edelgard's squad, which was just as difficult as the last, as Edelgard's stats were very high, and she came equipped with a 1-2 range weapon. Her only weakness was her sort of low hit. Her adjacent ally, Dorothea, fortunately was much weaker, and I'd have to take her down first if I wanted to beat Edelgard. Okay, to engage the squad, I used a curve shot to make the move, then I used Leonie to bait out Dorothea and deal a little bit of damage back. Then I retreated and used an elixir to get Leonie back to full HP, and placed an unequipped Byleth to the south to try to lure Edelgard away from Dorothea. This didn't work as planned, but Leonie did use up Dorothea's thunder magic. I now backed away with everyone and spent the next couple turns trying to figure out how to make Edelgard move away from Dorothea, which led to me coming up with this plan of baiting in Dorothea with Leonie and placing Byleth 2 spaces away from Edelgard's attack range. This split the 2 units up, making it safe for me to unleash various combat arts to defeat Dorothea. Now I was left with just Edelgard. At this point in time, I didn't have an easy way to engage her. She one-rounded my whole team, her attack was way too high. So my best bet to fight her required stacking as much avoid as possible. So I used Leonie in a forest to distract her for a few turns, and used the movement boost from the DLC stat booster to move out of attack range. Leonie's distraction now gave my team the space to run left and then north. My first objective with this play was to engage Manuela, who is pretty weak and can only attack with Nosferatu, so by entering combat against her 3 times, I can easily break it to make her basically useless. This makes it safe for me to stand in the thicket tiles that boost defense by 2 and avoid by 40. My initial plan here was to use the defense boost to make Leonie durable enough to take 2 hits from Edelgard, which first required her to learn HP plus 5, so I had to get lucky at first to survive. This strategy would allow me to somewhat reliably break Edelgard's weapon to significantly reduce her offense. Unfortunately, on this attempt, Leonie got crit, and I immediately gave up on this idea, because in Free Houses, if you spend more than 99 turns on a single map, you immediately game over. Breaking Edelgard's weapon would take at least 30 turns considering her hit rates, and I don't think that would give me enough time to clear the rest of the map, so I had to think of a different plan, and I also had to make it back to the point where I could fight Edelgard again, which obviously took a while. My new setup for this plan began just before I engaged Edelgard, as this time I didn't heal up Byleth, which allows me to more consistently bait Edelgard away from Dorothea. And speaking of Dorothea, this time I lured her in with Hilda to intentionally lower Hilda's HP. Once Dorothea was defeated, this chip damage allowed me to heal up the rest of my team to make sure Hilda was Edelgard's target, so I could leave her behind and use her to get Edelgard's stock moving in a loop, heading left then right. So this time I didn't have to take the risk of engaging Edelgard in combat to move my team up to Manuela. Speaking of Manuela, once I used up her Nosferatu, I placed Leonie on a thicket and lured Edelgard up, benefiting from the significant 40 avoid boost, allowing Hilda to slowly make her way north. Once she regrouped with my team, I set up my play to fight Edelgard by breaking the lower right wall. This paved the way for me to lure Edelgard to this tile with Lorenz. Now, by moving some units away, I could set Byleth up to have as much avoid as possible, so all I needed to do now was get lucky and kill Edelgard with smashes. This obviously isn't reliable, but with Edelgard's low hit rates, none of my units are actually that likely to die to her, especially considering that this game uses 2 random numbers to determine hit, so low hit rates are way lower than what's displayed. Speaking of hit rates, on Edelgard's turn, she will almost always attack the unit to the north of Byleth because that unit gains a smaller avoid bonus from the forest, so she'll usually stay adjacent to Byleth so he can attack her on every turn. The only exception to this rule is if Byleth gets injured, then she'll move back and focus Byleth, so now I just have to get lucky, and my first attempt with this plan actually came pretty close to killing her. I got her down to just 9 HP, but died to her landing 2 attacks on Claude. Across my next couple of attempts, I made some slight adjustments of using Leonie as my low HP unit instead of Hilda, which made luring Edelgard around a little easier because I gave her the movement stat booster. The overall plan to kill Edelgard stayed the same though, just get lucky. After about 20 hours of resets, I got this run going where Byleth was dealing great damage with smashes and dodging Edelgard's attacks to stay alive. On this run, I got a lucky crit to drop her down to 1 HP. Unfortunately, I couldn't secure the kill on this turn, turn and she healed. But it didn't matter as Byleth crit again and defeated her, so now I just had to defeat the Blue Lions. To safely engage them, I need to make sure I don't kill Manuela, as if I did that, the Blue Lions would all charge towards me, and 3 enemies at one time would be too difficult for me to handle, especially considering that Dedue and Dimitri both have very high attack and defense. Also, what's quite scary around this part of the map is the durability on a lot of my weapons, specifically my axes and lances are running low, so I need to be careful. Okay, so before doing anything, I first attacked into Manuela for a little class experience to help Leonie pick up HP plus 5. Next, I decided to fight Mercedes, who was easily the weakest unit remaining on the map. Her low attack made it simple for me to bait her out, and then I could just surround her to prevent her from attacking. With various attacks, I now defeated her with ease and intentionally gave the kill to Leonie, as if Leonie levels up HP one time, I don't have to rely on a dodge to bait out Dedue. Next up, I took on the new weakest unit on the map, Hanuman, who is actually somewhat scary because his spells have a high crit rate. Fortunately, Leonie didn't get crit and managed to bait Hanuman to the left. Next, I attacked with Lorenz, who got crit and died. Then I attacked with Claude, and next got lucky with a crit of my own to defeat him, which was actually bad as I wanted to give Leonie that kill to level up. Next up, it was time for me to take on Dedue. To do this, I used Leonie to bait him out, and of course, he hit a 3% crit and killed her. Without her around to frontline, I was pretty sure my run was over, but I still tried to win by luring Dedue south so I could fight him from a thicket, and my plan to kill him was pretty much the exact same plan I used for Edelgard, just get lucky. And this time, I didn't get lucky and lost. As I said before, getting to this point took 20 hours of me literally just resetting. I was constantly dying to low percent crits because my units had 0 luck. Losing because of these crits just didn't feel good, so this is the point where I decided to add the luck stat back into the game to make the overall challenge feel more consistent. After making this change, I started up a new run again to make sure adding the luck stat into the game wouldn't have an impact on the enemy AI. And from what I could tell on this first map, adding in luck doesn't really change anything. So I quickly progressed using the strategies I already figured out before. However, I did play the end of the map slightly differently. As while Byleth was grinding axe rank, I also moved Claude in to grind bow rank and Byleth support points. I grinded here all the way until the 99 turn limit, and it got Claude up to D+ in bows and a little over halfway to C rank. My goal with this play was to make it possible for Claude to reach C+ in bows on chapter 1 by grinding against Manuela for like 60 turns. This will net Claude a new combat art, Monster Blast, which grants 5 extra might, 4 more than Curved Shot, and it also gives a small 10 crit boost. I theorized that this small boost of extra damage would make beating Dedue and Dimitri far safer, as Claude would be capable of safely dealing damage to them without risking a counterattack. Speaking of damage increases, because Claude and Byleth gained a lot of support points on the prologue, I'm going to unlock their C rank support just before the first monastery exploration segment, which is actually quite significant, as this support offers a 1 damage boost that should make my strategy against Edelgard a little more consistent, since it will take less turns to take her down. Anyway, moving on to chapter 1, the changes I've made compared to last time has had a small impact on my strategy. Firstly, at the start of the map, sometimes Ferdinand will not chase Byleth on turn 2, which completely ruins my whole strategy. The solution to this problem was simple to figure out, as from what I could gather, Ferdinand only moved to the right if Byleth missed his first attack. I assume Ferdinand's personal skill being active changed how his AI behaved, so I just had to reset to make sure Byleth hit his first attack. Other than that, I found that Ferdinand's targeting priority after Ashe was defeated was a little different than before, but by just keeping Claude low on HP, I eventually found a reliable way to replicate my original plan to set up to kill him. Since Claude was now low on HP, later I used him as my bait to lure Edelgard away from Dorothea instead of Byleth, since that made a little more sense. Skipping ahead to just after I've used up Manuela's Nosferatu, as I sort of explained earlier, this time I need to make sure Claude attacks Manuela on every turn to build up his bow rank as fast as possible. Okay, those are the main changes I've implemented, so let's now skip ahead until I'm on a good run. so a run that gets Edelgard down to low HP. There was one change of plan I made on this attempt, which was a mistake, and we'll get to why later. The mistake I made here is I broke the lower left wall below Hilda. I did this because I knew next turn Byleth would drop Edelgard below 20% HP. That would make her AI heal with a vulnerary. I didn't want her to do this, as every turn I attack her, I'm taking a risk that can result in a game over. So I planned to just move Leone in to deal the killing blow. This obviously is a slightly more reliable way to defeat her. The issue with this plan is it actively makes it harder to deal with Dedue and Dimitri, as without the wall there, I'll have to frontline with 2 units, which isn't ideal, as Leone is my only unit capable of reliably surviving a round of combat against them. So the takeaway here is breaking the wall is bad because it increases my odds of losing a unit. Next time, I fixed this mistake by moving Leone to the left, so she was still in range to attack Edelgard, and I didn't have to break the wall to compromise my strat with Dedue. Skipping ahead a little, Leone did level up HP on this attempt, which made my engage on Dedue 100% reliable. With my injured Leone, I retreated to attempt to lure Dedue to the lower thickets. This didn't exactly go as planned, but eventually I got him there. With Dedue positioned here, I just had to go for combat arts and hope I get lucky with dodges. It's safest for me to do this with Leone because she lives 2 attacks, and to make sure I conserve as many lance uses as possible, I need to trade her a broken weapon for enemy phase, as I want to have at least 2 Tempest Lance uses for Dimitri. This process is extremely nerve-wracking, as it takes like 15 hours to get the RNG that actually makes it this far. Fortunately, my preparations from the last map came in clutch here, as finally Claude learnt the Monster Blast combat art, which actually turned him into a viable source of damage, as with Byleth's support boost and Hilda's personal skill, he was capable of dealing 3 damage to Dedue without any risk. This was the only attack I needed now, and with elixirs to keep my frontline sustained, Claude weakened Dedue into Tempest Lance range, allowing Leone to deal the finishing blow. After Byleth and Claude defeated Manuela, the true challenge began as I was down to the last enemy, Dimitri, and I only had about 10 turns to beat him. The first step to take him down required me to lure him into the usual choke point with Leone, who always survives his 2 attacks and can heal with an elixir to stay sustained. Now, like against Dedue, I need to shoot him down with Claude's Monster Blasts that deal full damage. These alone aren't going to be enough to bring Dimitri down, because it isn't going to deal enough damage to end the map by turn 99. So on turn 98, I had to make a play. At first, I decided to sacrifice Leone with Tempest Lance to deal 5 damage, then I used Lorenz to shoot down the wall, then followed up with Monster Blast. Lastly, I moved Hilda down to boost Byleth's power and used one final smash to finally end this map in 98 turns and a total playtime of like 85 hours. Going into the next monastery segment, I reset for 10 good amiibo gazebo items, which I can do every time I explore the monastery, so you can pretty much assume I'm always doing this to keep a good supply of elixirs. Nearby, I can now access the cooking together feature, which is really useful in this run, as it provides temporary stat boosts. Right now, I cooked a defense meal, and I did it with Bernadetta because I wanted to recruit her as soon as possible. Heading over to the greenhouse, I planted high rarity seeds to maximize my professor level gain, as I wanted to unlock adjutants at C rank professor level. After I was done in the greenhouse, I headed for Abyss to recruit the DLC units, with Bolfus easily being the best of the 4 because of his personal skill. While I was here, I used the 10,000 renown you get with the Chalice of Beginnings to unlock the Pagan Altar. This allows me to offer my renown for more powerful weapons, which are obviously very valuable since all my units have 0 strength and magic. This concluded my monastery exploration and led into the first tutoring session. At first here, there's not really too much to say, just generically you can assume I'm training my units in axes and bows to later reclass to Brigand and Archer for hit plus 20 and death blow, that are excellent skills throughout the whole game. For my short-term plans, I taught Raphael Authority, hoping to reach D rank for Rally Strength, and I also wanted to pick up Hilda's budding talent skill, Seal Speed, which I theorized to actually be valuable in the early game to help my team not get doubled. For right now, this is really all that's important, so let's head into the next required map, which is a skirmish battle. During my preparations, I'm going to make sure I buy some iron shields for the extra 2 defense, and I'm also going to make sure I give Raphael a battalion so I can grind up his authority rank for rally strength. Now, going into battle, I'm going to push north with Bolfus and position the rest of my team to attack on player phase next turn. Because the enemy soldiers only have 2 attack speed, Bolfus isn't going to be doubled and is comfortably going to be dropped below 50% of his max HP, activating his personal personal skill. With my archers and Lorenz, I now defeated one unit, clearing the way for me to defeat another. Next turn, I dispatched the third unit, and now place Bolfus right here to block the enemies from moving in. With his personal skill active, a hit on enemy phase into a combat art is just enough to bring a soldier down. Holding this position was now pretty easy until the boss moved in. That actually has a speed stat, so they'll double my whole team. Initially, I didn't respond to them though, as I knew they always move first on player phase. So this turn, they just do nothing. And next turn is where I had to worry. So I used a gambit to lock them in place while I dispatched some units, which dropped Bolfus into an awkward amount of HP where healing would make him lose his personal skill, so my best bet was to retreat with him and frontline with Leone. Now I just fired off arrows with my archers and brought the boss down with Bolfus. With them defeated, the map was pretty much a free win now. None of the remaining enemies put up much of a fight. I intentionally decided to not kill the final enemy though, as I wanted to use them to grind up weapon ranks. To do this, I lured them into attacking Leone on every turn, and attacked with Lorenz and Bolfus to grind weapon ranks while also leveling up their battalions, as having those maxed out would help a lot on chapter 2. Eventually, I swapped Leone out with Bolfus as he took 0 damage from the soldier, and around this time, Lorenz maxed out his battalion, so I moved him away and started attacking with Raphael to both max out his battalion and increase his authority rank. By grinding for a lot of turns here, Raphael reached authority rank D, unlocking rally strength, and that was all I really wanted to get, so now I defeated the final enemy to clear the map. After a brief tutorial, I now moved on to chapter 2. To start this map off, I placed Bolfus in enemy range to lure in the archer and bait the first enemy squad into moving. With my archer's chip damage, I easily set Lorenz up to kill here, and the archer was also pretty easy to beat with Bolfus and Leone. I wasn't able to kill the second fighter, but Hilda and Leone had enough defense with iron shields to survive one round of combat, so killing them wasn't too important this turn. Next turn, by attacking with everyone, I easily defeated them, and now another 3-unit enemy squad ran towards me. I tried to get some chip damage on them with Bolfus and Leone, but it didn't really end up doing much. Since these units have 5 move and pass, I have to kill at least 2 of them on this turn if I don't want to die. I initiated into the squad with Leone and immediately realized I had no safe way to take out the archer, so I instead focused the lower thief by healing Bolfus so he could attack and followed up with Lorenz to kill. Unfortunately, there was no way I could kill the archer, so I had to try to lock them in place with a gambit, but due to my 0 charm, it just missed, so I used Divine Pulse to try to find a winning play, but I didn't succeed and had to reset the map. A few attempts later, I got a run going where both Bolfus and Leone hit their counterattacks. This allowed Bolfus to attack to kill the thief, then Hilda, Lorenz, and Claude could take down the archer. And by stacking my team together, the thief couldn't move anywhere dangerous with pass. With them now gone, another enemy squad ran at me, a team comprised of 2 thieves and a priest. Since the priest had 1 less movement than the thieves, I decided to just back away and let them approach me, so some distance would build up between the priest and the thieves, so I wouldn't have to fight them all at the same time. Once the thieves drew near, I enemy phased them with Leone and missed. So I retreated, and next turn she luckily hit the counterattack, making it easy to defeat the thief and keep a good front line to survive enemy phase. With rally strength, I now boosted Bolfus up so he could take the thief down, and my Tempest Lance users easily took down the priest, leaving just 1 aggressive enemy group remaining. Like the last enemy group, by staying in the back, I could split these units up so the fighters weren't protecting the archer. This allowed me to just kill them, and since the 2 fighters couldn't attack at 2 range, taking them down now wasn't all that difficult. Now, none of the remaining enemies on the map will approach me without being provoked, so if I want to, I can just run up to the boss and fight them. But I wanted some experience to get some units into a new class, so I engaged the fighters to the left with Bolfus. Then I backed away to lure them into the bridge choke point, and there I had no issues taking them out. Next, I pushed up, opened the chest, killed the brigand, and then dispatched the incoming archer. After this, my team marched north to engage the other archer, causing them to move and be susceptible to getting trapped on the bridge, making them trivial to defeat. Since I didn't want to take any more risks with the remaining normal units, I now headed for the boss Costas. Because his attack is really high, I have to bait him out with Leone. This made some other units move, so I had to take him down this turn, which wasn't easy to do as his attack made attacking at melee range very dangerous. So first, I fired at him with my archers and then tried to land a gambit to prevent a counterattack, which failed. Next, I tried using a gambit again with Bolfus, but that also missed, and now I had no safe way to engage him, so I had to rewind back a couple turns. This time, I set up as many supports as possible to maximize my gambit odds. odds, and decided to use a Gambit with both Claude, which missed, and Lorenz, which luckily hit this time. Now, I just had to boost Bolfus up with Rally Strength to have the power to kill and end this chapter. Continuing on, I can now reclass Bolfus in the Monastery, and Fighter and Soldier are both great, as their mastery skills Strength +2 and Defense +2 are valuable in the early game when you have 0 strength and defense. Additionally, what's worth noting is Reposition might actually be very good in this run, as I theorized that chaining repositions together could sort of fill the role of Warp, which I can't effectively use with 0 magic. Anyway, during this month I focused on gaining support with Bernadetta and Sylvain, and trained a few units to learn somewhat useful budding talent abilities. Outside of unlocking the Battalions Guild for some extra stat boosts, nothing else important happened in the Monastery, so let's move on to Chapter 3, one of the easier maps in the game. I'm going to start this one off by moving my team down a little and to the left, and my initial plan here was to just stay back and leave the enemies for Catherine to handle, since she has very good stats. Obviously, I'm going to have to fight 1 or 2 of the enemies, but with this strat, I didn't have to take any risks until Catherine just stopped moving for some reason. At this point, I actually had to move up and lure the Dark Mage out of hiding. I tried to lure them to the right to have an easier time engaging them, but they ended up getting distracted by Catherine, so I moved my team up, which lured in an Archer and Mercenary. The Archer was simple to handle by attacking at 1 range, but the Mercenary was actually pretty annoying, so I ended up needing to use Divine Pulse charges to take him out. Once I did that, I lured the Mage to the right, then attacked with Hilda and killed with Bolfus thanks to Stride's movement boost. This cleared the fog, made Catherine move again, and it also baited in 2 fighters, which I actually struggled against because I couldn't kill them both on the same turn because of their counterattacks. So I had to take a gamble with a Blaze Gambit to freeze them in place, and next turn, defeating them was easy. On the other side of the map, Catherine had now broken her Thunderbrand, so she wasn't very useful now, and was dying to the archers, so I'd moved my team in to save her. This rewarded me with death, as she now charged at the enemy group near Lonato. This ultimately resulted in her death, and more importantly, it baited like 5 units to move towards me. My team could not take that many units at once, and since I had no more uses of Divine Pulse, this eventually resulted in a game over. On my second attempt, I played the map slightly differently, which doesn't really matter, as the main difference on this run compared to the last is Catherine used less uses of Thunderbrand so she could fight more units. So she had no trouble with the upper archers, and she even managed to deal with the 3-unit squad that defeated her on my last attempt. After she did this, her weapon broke, and she died in the forest engaging a fighter. Once I defeated that fighter, I then had a clear path straight to the final 2 fighters, that I defeated with ease thanks to Bolfus, Lorenz, Claude, my mages, and Hilda. This left just the boss, Lonato, remaining. To take him down, I first decided to use Leone to break his javelin. This made it safe for me to attack at 2 range, but because of the heal tile's healing, my archers weren't capable of killing him, and I was mainly doing this to build up weapon ranks. When I was satisfied with the weapon experience I gained, I set my team up to maximize Gambit hit rate and used Assembly to pull Lonato off the heal tile. Since Lonato doesn't move and was no longer receiving healing, Claude could now just shoot him until he was low on HP, which allowed Bolfus to secure the KO to end the map. Immediately before exploring the Monastery, I'm now going to recruit Bernadetta, who is probably the best unit in the game for this run. She has a great personal skill that grants +5 damage, basically for free. She gets the amazing Enclosure combat art to lock enemies in place, and best of all, at C+ lances, she learns the Vengeance combat art, one of the best in the game that directly adds damage taken into power. So if I can get her set up on low HP, her damage is going to be game-breaking. Anyway, during this month, I unlocked tournaments in the Monastery, which seemed impossible to win, so I never did those, and since I had recruited Bernadetta now, I focused some of my support point gains into Catherine, as I wanted to recruit her to pick up Thunderbrand, a really good sword. During the teaching segment, I focused Lances and Cav rank on Bernadetta, as I want her to learn Pass from her budding talent, I want her to learn Vengeance as soon as possible, and I want her to reclass to Cav at level 10 for Canto. Before advancing to Chapter 4, I ended up doing some skirmish maps. None of them were very difficult, but I did use them as an opportunity to grind class mastery for a couple stat boosting skills, and I of course grinded Bernadetta up to C+ Lancers for Vengeance. That was going to be very useful on Chapter 4. Okay, so on turn 1 here, I'm going to head down, rally Bernadetta's speed to avoid a double, and lure in the Mage and Archer on enemy phase, allowing Bernadetta to take 20 28 damage. This will now boost Vengeance's power by 28 points, so she can easily one-shot the archer, and with Claude and Byleth, the mage was also easy to take down. Now I just pushed along the right side of the map and didn't really have any trouble at all, because Bernadetta could reliably one-shot every unit she battled. So without much effort, I made it up to the chest, destroyed the Myrmidons, and then headed south to combat the mage reinforcements. With a Pure Water's res boost, I found success with baiting them in with Byleth and then running in with Bolfus and Bernadetta to secure the kills. Once I took down the third mage, I ran north, put some kills to my lower level units, and made it to the boss with 7 turns to spare. Before killing them, I destroyed the nearby units to the right, which didn't really take much effort, and this leveled Bernie up to level 10, so I could reclass her to Cav for Chapter 5, which I expected to be quite difficult. Using my Divine Pulse charges, I tried to experiment and see if killing the Death Knight was possible, and it wasn't, so now I focus the boss. With Break Shot, which lowers defense by 5, and Curved Shot, I weaken them so Bolfus could take the kill and finish the map, securing Byleth with the Sword of the Creator. During my next month in the monastery, some of my units could now reclass into intermediate classes, which have a lot of good abilities with Vantage, Hit plus 20, Death Blow, and Fiendish Blow, so my team is going to get a lot stronger around this point. Anyway, in the monastery this month, I unlocked Saint statues for some experience buffs and more rewind uses. Since Chapter 5, the Miklan map was coming up next, I made sure to recruit Sylvain to get the Lance of Ruin early, and I also improved Catherine's support rank to B, so I only needed Byleth at level 6 to recruit her, giving me access to her Thunderbrand. After this, I headed into some skirmish maps and used broken weapons to grind class mastery with Death Blow on Bolfus and Hit plus 20 on Bernadetta, which prepared me to take on Chapter 5. At first here, I moved my squad right, fired a shot to bait out the thief, and lured in the 2 fighters with Bolfus. Utilizing Leonie's Break Shot, I reduced a fighter's defense by 5, allowing Ignatz to activate Steel Strength, which only activates if you do at least 1 point of damage. This 6 strength reduction guaranteed that Bernadetta would survive 2 hits from this guy and would in turn set up her Vengeance combat art for later. Now, the rest of my team could collapse onto the fighters, and on enemy phase, some reinforcements appeared. I didn't want to fight them immediately, so I just pushed north using Vengeance. Gilbert now died, which doesn't matter. Then I positioned Bernadetta just out of the lower enemy's range and lured in the mage with Claude. Next turn, Bernadetta could kill the thief and have the movement to Canto out of enemy range. The strat of hitting and running seemed to be very useful on this map, so with ease, I defeated the incoming mages, and the next set of reinforcements was also pretty easy with the Vengeance and Canto combo. I did actually leave the last mage alive though, to set Bernadetta up on 2 HP to get more damage out of Vengeance. Once that mage died, I moved up and sent Bolfus alone past the pillar, which makes the reinforcements appear, that I baited south with Leonie. On player phase, I used Bernadetta to kill the upper thief so she could Canto out of range of the next wave of thief reinforcements, and for the other units, I killed them with bows. Before ending turn, I had to move Bolfus north to only be in range of 1 thief so he wouldn't die. After enemy phase ended, I killed the thief reinforcements, then moved right with Bolfus and used an elixir to stay alive. Next turn, I wiped out the 2 aggressive units to save Bolfus, and now I headed left. The next section of the map was pretty easy. I just lured out the archer, killed with Bolfus, and then defeated the knight with Vengeance. Nearby, I one-shot the other knight, rewarding a useful accuracy ring, and now I had to think of a plan for the next enemy formation. None of my units would survive 2 units attacking them at once here, so the archer's long range was looking to be problematic. After some planning, I decided to use Stride to boost Bernadetta's movement so she could one-shot a knight and retreat out of enemy range with the help of reposition. This just baited out an archer, so Bernadetta could now kill them, and by repeating this plan, I managed to defeat the other knight and archer, leaving a basically defenseless fighter which posed no challenge whatsoever. Initially, I wasn't sure how to approach the next enemy formation, so I made a mistake engaging them, which left some of my units cornered, and since I had no more rewind juices left, when Bolfus now died, I decided to just spend half an hour replaying the chapter. This time, I initiated into the squad with Bernadetta and kept her safe with Bolfus. 4 units now moved towards me, and to survive another turn, I one-shot the Northern Thief with Vengeance, cantoed away, then attacked the remaining thief with Claude and Leonie, leaving her in range of only 1 unit, so she survived. Now with combat arts and ranged attacks, these 2 foes remaining posed no challenge. Similarly, the nearby archers weren't much trouble either. I just baited them out, killed the closest one with Bernie, and created a front line that could survive the other archer. Next turn, I easily killed with combat arts, and the same plan will work for the other 2 archers. So with this final monk defeated, all that was was left for me to do was beat Miklan, who was very easy to kill because he has no crest, so the Lance of Ruin does 10 damage to him after every combat. Using my ranged attacks, I abused this interaction and easily got him down to 1 HP, where he perished to a monster blast. The map wasn't done yet though, as he transformed into a black beast. At first, I just waited for him to approach and now decided to use a gambit. Since beasts usually have 0 charm, my gambits are actually going to be quite accurate against this guy. Unfortunately, Claude's blaze missed, but Bolfus managed to hit his. Since Miklan was now stunned, I could safely use Leone, Hilda, and Byleth to break his barrier, and use Vengeance with Bernadetta to take out his first HP bar. Catherine now crit to take out another, and for the third, I'd have to wait until next turn. This turn, the beast could now counterattack, so I attacked with Break Shot to lower defense. This allowed Hilda to deal damage and activate Seal Speed to lower the beast's speed down to 3, so it would no longer double my units. This let me get damage in with Catherine and Claude, allowing Bolfus to kill them and clear the map. During the next cutscene with Rhea, I'm going to refuse to return the Lance of Ruin, so Sylvain will show up and I can obtain the Lance of Ruin without having to do the Sylvain paralogue. Throughout the next month, I recruited 3 additional units, which are all going to be useful. First off, I recruited Cyril, who is very good because he gets point blank volley very early at C+ bows, which is great at taking down flyers. Additionally, he also learns Vengeance, that you already know is really good. The second unit I recruited was Felix, because he starts with a C rank in Brawling, so I could immediately reclass him into Brawler, giving me access to a Guard Adjutant. These guarantee you survive a double attack, which is very useful for like lowering Bernadetta's HP to 1, and in general it's good for survival, as eventually my units are going to get 1-rounded because they have 0 defense, so a Guard Adjutant is going to be the only way for me to not die. The final unit I recruited was Shamir, who is kind of useful since she starts in Sniper, which knows Bowfair for a free extra 5 damage. With these units, I headed into 2 skirmish maps to grind out weapon ranks and class mastery. The only important ability I got here was Encloser on Claude, which makes a hit enemy unable to move. On chapter 6, I couldn't use this though, as you can't deploy Claude here. And by the way, this map is actually pretty hard because of the 25 turn limit. Since my team can't safely deal good damage at range against archers, I decided to ignore the hallway to the right and just focused on the squad to the left. I baited them in with Bernie, and since she has a Guard Adjutant equipped, she'll always survive here and be on the perfect HP to abuse Vengeance, which she used to destroy the archer. I now lured the other units into this choke point and gradually brought them down with Bolfus, Bernie, and Byleth. Once I was done in the choke point, the 2 remaining archers in this room were fortunately both easy one-shots with Vengeance. For the next room, I first killed the mage over the wall with ranged attacks, then I straddled up Bernie to one-shot the armored unit and ran away with Kanto. To beat the soldier to the left, I could use Bernie again, but after this, I actually had to enemy phase to lure the rest of the units out. With Vengeance, I secured an easy kill here, and then I just used my entire team to kill the other 2 enemies. Because I wanted the treasure, I now prepared my team to go through the warp tile with Stride, which will spawn in 3 units. These are not easy to beat, and it took me a couple rewinds to get this turn right. Okay, to beat these 3, I used Bernadetta to kill the right cav, then I attacked the archer with Leone and Byleth, and next one-shot the other cav with Bolfus. Now to take out the final enemy, I just used Shamir's heavy shots. Now I activated the warp tiles and used Bernadetta to take out some key units like the priest, which I needed to be dead to safely take on the center room, which is easily the hardest part of the map, as in the room there are many ranged units with overlapping range, which will easily kill my units if I'm not careful. Additionally, because of the turn limit, I also can't play this part of the map slow. To clear this room, initially I tried to lure some units near this wall so I could be in range to kill on player phase. This plan required me to get a little lucky on enemy phase, but this time it succeeded. This turn I tried to push in with Bernie because I had like 4 turns to win. This plan failed, and with the amount of turns I had remaining, I couldn't really think of a way to win, so I tried a risky move again, and since that failed, I had to attempt the map again. This time I decided to experiment a little, and before taking the teleporter, I baited out the archer in the center room and killed them with bow combat arts with Leone and Bernie. I also now lured some mages south to hopefully give me more space later. Anyway, I now defeated the foes in the right room, then the priest and armored unit, and now I was ready to clear the center room. I did this by sending in Bernadetta, and because I killed the archer earlier, she could kill the mage and safely retreat. Next turn, I dispatched the Myrmidon, and to take the 2 mages I killed with Bernie and Leone. Now, by moving Bernie up to position position near the door, I just had to open it and pass by the mages to deal lethal damage to the Death Knight and end the chapter. Going into the next month, nothing special is going to happen. I just recruited Annette for her rallies, reclassed Bernie into Pegasus Knight, and unlocked Paralogs, which are actually pretty important in this run, as they often reward you with really good battalions that significantly boost stats. The first Paralog I decided to do was the Lorenz one, since it's pretty easy to cheese. Anyway, I started this map off by luring in a mage to set up Bernadetta's Vengeance, then I killed them with Shamir and Bolthus. With Stride's movement boost and every position, Bernie can now run straight to Acheron and one-shot with Vengeance. After grinding on a regular skirmish map, I headed straight into Chapter 7. Like Chapter 3, this map isn't really all that hard, as you can just sit back and leave the fighting to the NPC units. Okay, at first here, I just moved my team to the right and lured in a Cav with Bernie to set her up to get good value on Vengeance, which she used next turn to kill the Cav and retreat. After waiting for them to approach again, I killed Ash and used Constance and Bolthus to dispatch the Cav. At this point, some flyers began to move in, so I placed Bernie in position to kill one, retreat, kill the other, and then next turn kill Ferdinand. If we now look at the battle to the south, the Blue Lions are kind of getting destroyed, including Dimitri, so with no more targets left to attack, the Black Eagles were now running at me. Fortunately, they mainly just came at me one at a time, which obviously makes it easy for me, as I can just delete them with Vengeance on every turn. Once the incoming units were defeated, none of the remaining enemies were aggressive, so I actually had to move up to kill the 4 remaining units. The first 2 near the ballista were no problem. I just baited out the Cav with Bolthus, then killed with Bernie, and strided up to attack the archer. Next, Edelgard died in one shot, and Sylvain one-rounded Mercedes to end the map in the Golden Deer's victory. Going into the next month, I can now hire some more battalions, with the Alliance Wyvern Co being especially useful, as it has the Impregnable Wall Gambit, which you'll later see is very good. In addition to this, I recruited Anna this chapter, and tutored her in flying to cheese a map later on. Next up, I decided to do some Paralogs, and Oil and Water is what I decided to do first. I started this map off by striding, then I used Enclosure to lock the Mercenary in place, and with a Gambit I locked the Swordmaster in place. Now I used Impregnable Wall on Bernadetta and moved her in range of a bunch of units. Because of Impregnable Wall, she won't die here and will lose some HP to power up Vengeance, which I'm going to utilize next turn by first repositioning Hanuman to be in range to stride Bernie, allowing her to reach the boss. With my rewinds, I will eventually land a crit here and clear the map. After this, I headed into the Ignatz and Raphael Paralog. On this map, I first moved Bernie up to the mage to lose HP, and then used Impregnable Wall on her to survive and lose more HP. Next turn, I used Stride and Reposition to allow her to pass through the enemies and reach the boss. A simple Vengeance one-shot them, so the map was pretty easy and rewarded me with 2 good battalions. Since Bernadetta was now level 20, I reclassed her into Paladin for more move and damage, which should help for Chapter 8. On turn 1 here, I sent Bernie southeast and used a Gambit for 3 damage. Then I used Bolthus and Sylvain to kill a villager and lock the other one in place with Plot Enclosure. Nothing important happened during enemy phase, and on player phase I just secured 4 easy kills and moved Bernie up. This allowed her to rescue the nearby villager next turn, and on the other side of the map I rescued another with Sylvain. This is when Solon revealed himself and the Death Knight appeared, with them headed through the left side of the map. On the other side of the map I saved another villager, and since I didn't have a good unit to save the upper right villager, I just used Impregnable Wall on them to stall for turns while Constance attacked. 2 turns later, Leonie was able to save this villager with point blank volley, and the 1 remaining villager was also simple to save. So my only objective now was taking on Solon, which wasn't going to be entirely free because he was hiding on the lower left part of the map, so I'd have to wait to engage him, which gave the Death Knight the time to rush me down. The only way to survive here was to use Impregnable Wall to take like no damage, and while I stalled here, Bernie made her way over to Solon. Next turn, I had to use Impregnable Wall again, and the turn after that, I just used a reposition and a shove to get Bernie in range to Vengeance Solon and clear the map. During this next month, I can pick up 3 useful battalions for free because I own the DLC, and more importantly, during this month the event the White Heron Cup occurs, which is the only way you can reclass a student into the Dancer class. That's extremely useful. The issue here is to unlock the class, your student has to win the dance competition, which requires them to have like 13 charm. So with 0 charm, my selected student cannot win and gain access to the Dancer class. But maybe my student didn't even have to win, as I theorized that if I let a different house win, and then during the week I recruited the winner, I might still get the class. I was pretty sure this wouldn't work, but I at least wanted to give it a try. This took me 3 hours to do with emulator speed up, and it didn't do anything and was just a waste of time. So I don't get an answer, which is pretty bad. Anyway, I now headed off to the Sophist Paralog. To start this map off, I'm going to move Byleth northwest, so only one wolf can attack him at once. Since he is equipped with a guard adjutant, outside of a crit, he will never die in this position, so we can pretty much ignore him for the rest of the map. My other squad is now going to open the chest with the knowledge gem and then curve shot a giant bird to make the move. With Claude, I took out the left bird's first HP bar and then sent in Leonie to use point blank volley to kill. For the second bird, I unleashed a gambit to break their barrier and used vengeance and point blank volley for lethal damage. I was unable to kill the third bird, so I just broke their barrier with some gambits and took a HP bar down with Sylvain while the boss approached me. With 2 gambits and a break shot, I destroyed the beast's barrier, then I attacked with Bernie and Bolfus to take out 2 HP bars, and next turn, taking out the third was trivial, so the map overall was pretty easy, but it wasn't as easy as the Felix Paralog. On this map, I just strided Bernie in range to attack the boss next turn, and used Impregnable Wall to make some of my units tanky enough to protect Rodrigue from attacks on enemy phase. Since last turn, Bernie was attacked, Vengeance is now perfectly set up to one-shot the boss, which will end the map and give me the Aegis Shield, which is quite useful for the +6 defense. Now it was time to continue the main story with Chapter 9. At first here, I just moved Bernie to the west to get down to low HP. Next turn, I used Stride to move my team over to the beast, break their armor, and take out their first 2 HP bars. With Impregnable Wall on Sylvain, I safely lured in another beast, and this turn I actually had a little trouble defeating them as their defense was really high, so I only took down 1 HP bar. This turn, Geralt got surrounded by 2 beasts, which was really bad as if he dies, you game over, and I can't heal from a distance because physics doesn't work because of my 0 magic, so I had to rush over there as quick as possible. So after I vengeanced the left beast, I used Impregnable Wall onto Geralt and buffed my team with Stride. This allowed me to push the lower beast away with Onslaught, clearing Hilda away to heal Geralt. Finally, I could use a Gambit with Bolfus on the lower beast to draw their attention. Because the upper beast is on their AoE turn, they're not going to kill Hilda, so everyone will survive and Geralt will escape with Canto. I now broke the lower beast's armor and used Impregnable Wall to hold the choke point with Hilda. Once enemy phase ends, I can just kill the lower beast with Vengeance, and now the rest of the map is going to be very easy, as every other beast is going to run at me from the upper choke, so I'll only have to fight one of them at a time. With Geralt, Bolfus, and the Impregnable Wall Gambit, I'm always going to have a unit capable of surviving enemy phase, and on player phase, I can use my long-range units to safely break their barrier, allowing Bernie to kill and safely retreat. I can pretty much just repeat this plan for every beast on the map now, so it didn't take much effort for me to win from this position. After Geralt's stupid death scene, nothing particularly interesting happened during this month's monastery segment, but I did ask for mission assistance from Caspar, so I could technically kill him off later. I did this to spite him, because it is literally impossible for me to recruit him, as his B support is not available until the time skip. So instead of recruiting him the normal way, I actually need to reach the stat and skill rank requirements, which I can't possibly fulfill as I have 0 in almost all of my stats. Anyway, after this, I headed to the Ingrid Paralog. On this map, I first picked up the Killer Axe with Ingrid, and then moved my team to the right, luring in some units, and thanks to a dodge, I set Bernadetta up on low HP. With Vengeance, I killed one of these enemies, then with Bolfus and Byleth, I killed the Archer and locked the Brigand in place with Claude. That Brigand now set up Bolfus's personal skill, and some infinite reinforcements approached. With Bernie, I now one-shot a Thief, and lured in the next enemy squad with Bolfus buffed with Impregnable Wall. For some reason, they ran left though, probably heading after Dorothea. This actually made it easy to kill them, as Bernie could kill them with Vengeance and safely retreat with Constance's drawback. During enemy phase, I now got surrounded by thieves on all sides. To get out of this, I killed the 2 thieves to the left and pushed my team in that direction to get away, and with Bolfus's large defense, I managed to survive without a death. Now, I just used Bolfus to smash this thief, then Byleth used a Gambit on another thief, and with Impregnable Wall, I made sure my frontline units wouldn't die. After Bernie killed the northern thief, enemy phase began, and nothing particularly interesting happened. My team was now just barely able to kill the Fire Emblem 3 thieves, and next turn with Stride, I Vengeance down the guy who calls out the reinforcements. As you'd expect, now that the reinforcements had stopped, I didn't really have any trouble defeating the nearby thieves, and now I began to move my team south, which spawns in 3 reinforcements that aren't particularly difficult. And after I killed the Archer near the lower brigands, they were easy to beat too. From here, it was pretty easy to push south and spawn in the next big wave of Axe user reinforcements. With Stride, I could end the map any turn now, but I really wanted experience, so more of my team could unlock advanced classes, with Byleth getting into Wyvern basically being a necessity if I want to beat Chapter 13. 13. So now I played the map slow and stayed alive thanks to Impregnable Wall and an offensive Gambit movement penalty. Eventually, I managed to clear all of these units out and reach the escape point with Ingrid to clear the map. Next up, I decided to do the Setif and Flame Paralog. This map is very easy because the enemies only move towards you if you're in their attack range. So you can just take it really slow and have like no problems, which is actually what happened to me. The map was completely free and an easy source of experience. Really, all you need to know about what I did here is I utilized the Guard Adjutant boost to safely bait the enemies out, and for the units in the water, I could simply kill with Bernadetta. So the map was just boring and easy, so I'm going to skip over it and now head off to the Sylvain Paralog. At first here, I'm going to move Caspar one space down and use his body to strike Sylvain, giving him the move to attack the archer and kill thanks to a crest proc. Moving closer, I'm going to lock the adjacent knight in place, and now this team will survive enemy phase, so let's now look at my squad over to the right. First, I'm going to attack with Bernie to lose HP, then I'm going to buff Bolfus's res and take out a mage which will lure in some units on enemy phase. Next turn, my western team didn't need to do much, Sylvain just killed an archer and Leone set up Impregnable Wall. My plan on the right side of the map was simple too. I just killed 2 mages with Vengeance and the Brigand with Constance and Bolfus. With those units taken out, the map was going to be a lot easier now, so my western team could now push up to the commander and my other team could take out some nearby units. Around this point, it was around turn 5, so the thieves began to move, and honestly, I didn't really care to stop them, as their drops are useless to me as stat boosters don't really do anything when you have capped stats. These thieves also don't attack you, so I could literally just ignore them and aim to just beat the archer commander. Around this time, my other team beat the mage commander, and I planned to kill the armored one with Bernie, but surprisingly, she didn't have enough damage to kill, so I just headed north to clear out the units near the center of the map. My 2 teams now joined together around the middle of the map and now gradually progressed towards the top right, and the foes there were no problem, so I swiftly defeated the commander. Now my team headed back to the armored unit, and with Constance's long-range magic to deal chip damage, Bernie could actually kill them this time, and this actually baited the remaining enemies into moving. This fortunately was no problem, as I could just back away and use Vengeance to thin their numbers. When the time was right, I killed another with Vengeance, locked a Merc in place with Claude, and used both Byleth and Bolfus to take out the monk. After I sacrificed Caspar as planned, I just had to kill the 3 remaining units to clear the chapter. During the last few maps, a couple of my units had now reached level 20, unlocking advanced classes, and there's 2 really good skills I can get from mastering some of these classes, with Wrath on Warrior and Defiant Strength on Hero. These can be combined together with Vantage to make a unit able to kill most enemies before getting attacked. This synergizes very well with Bolfus since he gets a big strength boost from being low on HP. Now to get some of these abilities, I headed into some skirmish maps to grind class mastery, and here I also picked up Uncanny Blow on Bernadetta from the Valkyrie class to make her more reliable. After this 2-hour grinding session, I ventured off to the Catherine and Ash Paralog to test Bolfus's new build out with both Vantage and Wrath. On turn 1, I rallied his strength, used Stride, and headed south towards the Cavs. With torches, I revealed some units, then killed the mages to the left with Byleth and Sylvain. Finally, I protected Constance with Impregnable Wall and experienced the frustrating 3 houses auto-equip mechanics, which equipped Bernadetta with the wrong accessory, so she died on enemy phase. Next time, I correctly had her equipped with a shield to get on low HP, and to the south of the map, Bolfus also got on low HP, and then just killed like all of the Cavs with his Vantage, Wrath, Killer Axe combo. Now he can just kill the one that survived to entirely clear out the lower part of the map. For the units towards the middle right side of the map, I used Bernie to kill the reinforcement spawning boss, then followed up with Leone to dispatch the flyer, and with Cyril I managed to take the 3rd unit down. After Byleth killed a mage, I healed up and ended turn. During enemy phase, armored units moved in, and now it was my turn again. Right now, I didn't want to move up as I knew Pegasus Knights were hiding above, so I just retreated and waited for some units to approach. To start this turn off, I strided Bolfus and engaged into the big 5-unit squad with a Blaze Gambit, which rattled them all. This set my team up to secure 2 kills, and to the left I used Sylvain's Swift Strikes to set Byleth up to finish off the assassin. Next turn, I basically beat the map, as Sylvain killed the other reinforcement spawning bishop, and my other squad secured 3 kills, which almost wiped out all of the aggressive enemies on the map. The last 2 were the assassins hiding above, one of which died to Vantage Wrath, and the other died to me just spamming combat art. Now I basically just just cleared out the easy mages and waited until the map ended. With no activity points remaining, I now continued onward to Chapter 10. On my first turn here, I moved my team north, used Retribution on Bolthus to make him counterattack regardless of range, and lured in 2 units, which set up my low HP builds. With Vengeance, I now killed the mage, then used Monster Blast and 2 Sword Strikes to break the beast's barrier, allowing Sylvain Swift Strikes to take out the beast's first HP bar. Now, I waited until next turn to deal the killing blow, and then moved Bolthus up to Vantage Wrath the foes above. This triggered almost every unit on the map to run at me, which wasn't good. To handle the Cavs, I used Sylvain with the powerful Cav effective Spear of Assault, and Bernadetta with Vengeance. Next, to handle some archers, I repoed Bolthus south and placed him right here to one-shot with Vantage Wrath. I didn't feel comfortable taking on the beast yet, so I used Stride to clear out the 2 units above and retreated. To make my engage on the beast safer, I now sniped the mage with Bernie and kept her safe with Impregnable Wall. Next turn, I basically did the exact same thing, and the turn after, it was my chance to defeat the now alone beast. Now, only 3 units were left, 2 beasts and Kronya. The beasts were honestly pretty easy, with Clod's free-range Monster Blasts to help break their barrier, and Kronya was easy too, as Bernadetta had a 100% chance to kill her. Byleth now got his big story power-up of +2 damage, and a bunch of enemies spawned in. The second part of this map is not very difficult. I first just killed the beast I left alive on the first section of the map, and then moved my team north in preparation to kill Solon, which I did by striding Bernadetta, shoving her, and flying straight at Solon, who died in one shot to Vengeance. During the next month, I'm going to ask for mission assistance from Ferdinand so I can kill him off like I did with Caspar. Unlike with Caspar, this actually provides a slight benefit, as killing him this way replaces him with a generic paladin on Chapter 16, which slightly reduces that unit's stats, making the chapter technically slightly easier. I haven't mentioned anything about weapon ranks in a while, because I basically have all the ranks I need to beat the game. So now, I was just chasing after situational abilities like Movement +1 on A+ Riding. Since Byleth now had the correct weapon ranks, he could reclass to Wyvern, and this makes the Anna Paralog a free win, as I could just hide my team in the bottom left corner of the map where no enemies can attack me. This allowed me to win on my first try and pick up a flying battalion with the Stride Gambit. After this, I headed off to the Alois and Shamir Paralog, which is also very easy. On this map, I just moved Bernadetta and Constance towards the center of the map, then I used Impregnable Wall on Bernadetta, attacked with Constance and enemy phased to take chip damage from Poison Strike. This gave me the power to take out the boss and clear the map, getting both of the battalions and also a Seraph Robe. I now grinded on a skirmish map for like 2 hours, and after that, I attempted the Constance and Yuri Paralog. At the start here, I used Stride and reposition on Bolthus to quickly send him north and decimate the enemies in his path. Simultaneously, I tried to set up my Vengeance users on low HP, but because Bernie died, I had to rewind and use Impregnable Wall to keep her alive. Now, I used Stride on Bolthus again and pushed further north. After securing a few more kills, I used Impregnable Wall on Bernie again to try to get her low on HP with the Sniper's Poison Strike. During this turn, the green unit you have to protect engaged a Thief-aligned unit, which transformed them into a beast. Next turn, I made a misplay, as I moved Bolthus near the green unit, which spawns in a lot of scary reinforcements, which I didn't want to fight immediately. So after rewinding, I played it a little better and stayed away from the Duke for one turn. While this happened, I used my Vengeance users to help handle the 3 units moving in around the bottom right of the map. Next, I used another Stride to send some more units up to assist near the center of the map, and with repositions and Canto, I moved the Duke out of enemy range without triggering the reinforcements. Around this point, I realized that the enemy Thief-aligned units don't actually attack you, so it was pretty easy to kill them and the beast across the next couple turns. Now, I sent Bolthus up to destroy the Northern Agarthans, and then turned back to face Mycen Squad that I cheesed with a high movement Cav, the Vantage Wrath combo, and a unit with a really strong player phase. This spawned in the reinforcements, and the units to the south were the most scary initially, so I took them out first. Once another turn passed, I destroyed the 3 foes to the left, and now I only had to focus on the units above. Bolthus couldn't handle all of these units, as some had battalions, so I decided to hold the line with Sylvain protected by Impregnable Wall, which made one of the cavalry run away. This allowed me to kill one of them for free and then retreat. After I defeated some mages, I waited for next turn, where I just killed everyone except one guy who I locked in place. Then next turn, I killed them to clear the map and receive the Fetters of Dromi. Of course, because I'm playing Free Houses, I now grinded on 2 skirmish maps for like 2 hours, then finally moved on to Chapter 11. On my first turn, I'm going to buff Bernadetta with both Impregnable Wall and Stride. This will allow her to safely move north and equip a Devil Axe for enemy phase. In this game, this weapon makes a unit take 10 damage after engaging in combat. This pairs especially well with Vengeance, as this allows Bernie to get to low HP while still being basically invincible thanks to Impregnable Wall. This play allowed me to kill the Flame Emperor on turn 2 and clear the map with ease. During the next month in the monastery, I am given an important mission from Sedith and have 1 Paralog remaining, so after another hour of grinding a skirmish map, I headed straight for the Hilda Paralog. At first here, I'm going to send Bernadetta north to get to low HP, then I'm going to buff Bolfus's defense with a Gambit and use Stride. This gives Byleth the movement to reach the lower choke where he will soon enter Vantage Wrath range, and it also allows Bolfus to move up and be ready to kill on enemy phase. With my other squad on the far right, I will now use Stride with a net and run forward with Cyril to point blank volley a Wyvern. Next turn, this team could rescue the armored unit above, and next focus on clearing out some units to the south. On the opposite side of the map, I used 2 flyers to defeat one of the giant birds, and also killed an archer with Bolfus. This next enemy phase was mostly pretty bad for me, as this giant bird moved in and was backed up by a lot of scary units that wanted to seize the defend point. So next turn, I had to hold my ground. To do this, I simply stunned the bird with a ranged Gambit with Hilda and retreated with her thanks to the Fetters of Dromi. Now I just had to block the defend point that was being threatened, and use Impregnable Wall to guarantee survival. After Bernadetta attacked, enemy phase went just as planned, no one died, but I was still in a rough spot because of the Cav. With some thinking, I came up with this plan of trade Bolfus the Fetters of Dromi, then I used Rewinds to allow Bolfus's next smash to kill the bird, and use the Fetters of Dromi to canto 1 space north. Bernadetta now managed to take out the Cav and move away, which set me up to plug the choke with Constance and buff my front line with Impregnable Wall, making them all basically invincible. For the next couple turns, I can now just repeat the plan of Impregnable Wall these 3 units and use Bernie to kill and move away. 2 turns later, this plan is going to change slightly, as my foes are going to run out of Gambits, which is going to make Bolfus have a strong enough player phase to also get some kills. With enough time, this plan defeated everyone above, and since I had no problems with the other enemies like the boss, routing the map now was pretty easy. After another hour of grinding, it was time to move on to the final map before the time skip, Chapter 12. On this map, I need to make very specific preparations to make it possible for me to beat Chapter 13, as you immediately head into battle on that chapter. So I made sure Byleth was on Wyvern, and I prepared a couple units with useful Gambits like Stride and Impregnable Wall. With these preparations complete, I started this map, which is going to be very easy. All I really need to do here is Stride Bernadetta, buff her with Impregnable Wall, and move her as far north as possible. Edelgard's army is now going to attack her and set up a somewhat strong Vengeance with Poison Strike's chip damage. This will allow her to run up to Edelgard, defeat her thanks to Rewinds, and move me on to Chapter 13. At first here, I'm going to use various attacks on this specific thief. After my reinforcements spawn in, I'm going to defeat this guy, which is going to clear the path from Hilda to Claude and Byleth's starting position. To get her to reach that tile, I'm going to stride her, reposition her, and shove. This gives her just the right amount of movement to safely move into this area. Now I'm going to move Byleth and Claude near her to set up for my strat to beat the boss, as now I can buff with Impregnable Wall and also Stride. This lets them safely fly east and survive all enemy attacks. In this position, they can now attack Palado. With a Killer Axe, Byleth had about a 50% chance to kill here, which I can re-roll with Rewinds, so critting here is fairly reliable. This will spawn in the real Palado to the north, in attack range of Claude, who can kill if he crits with Fallen Star. With Palado now defeated, the map was over. During this month in the monastery, nothing important is going to happen because we are past the time skip and like nothing matters here anymore, except like the gardening stat boosters and the new battalions in the battalion guild. Anyway, after like 2 hours of grinding, Bolfus was now level 30, and he can complete his build by becoming a War Master, giving him slightly more strength and crit. This boost is actually going to be very useful for Chapter 14, which is one of the more difficult post-time skip maps. I started this map off by using the Blessing Gambit on Bolfus and Bernie, ensuring they'll survive a lethal hit on 1 HP. Then I locked this Cav in place with Encloser and retreated Bernie in range to get damaged on enemy phase. Now I just moved Bolfus up and dispatched the first 2 units with my squad to the left. During enemy phase, Bolfus is going to kill people and survive the Onager thanks to Blessing. This unit is very annoying because it makes Bolfus Bolthus's whole build not work since they can attack without getting countered, so I wanted to kill them this turn. In order to kill them, I first ran away with Bolthus to take out a Cav, then I used various positional skills to move up a Strided Bernie that one-shot the sniper with Vengeance and cantoed to safety. Now on the left side, I used the Gambit with Byleth, then defeated an Archer with Point Blank Volley, and finally killed the armored unit with Swift Strikes. Other than Bolthus's 69 damage crits, enemy phase was uneventful. Honestly, now there wasn't really anything to worry about on the right side of the map, as Bolthus by himself was powerful enough to handle it. So around this point, I started to move my flyers over to the left to assist the green unit Swordmaster. Thanks to this help, I decided now was the perfect time to bait in the units around the Onager. Then, by striding my flyers, I had the movement to assassinate the Onager user, and also I managed to dispatch the 2 flyers. This paved the way for the Swordmaster to use the Onager to unleash the fire attack. That now makes the map trivially easy, as now the infinite reinforcements stop spawning and most of the other units just start running away. Really, all I had to do now was wait for enough units to run away to change the map's objective to defeat boss. This change allowed me to immediately beat the map by striking with Byleth for some chip damage to make it possible for Bernie to kill with Vengeance. In the monastery, Bernie could now become a Falcon Knight, which was pretty good, and nothing else really happened during the month, so let's immediately head into chapter 15. This map is very easy because you just have to kill the boss. I did this by using Impregnable Wall to get Bernadetta low, then I killed the archers and prepared my team to rush the boss next turn. I did this by striding Bernadetta, repositioning her, and then using Drawback. This placed her in attack range of the boss, and as usual, she only has to crit to take them down in 1 hit. After about 3 hours of basically doing nothing, I proceeded on to chapter 16. Since only like 2 units on this map move unprovoked, I just used my first 2 turns to move my team up to set up for turn 3, where I'm first going to use Stride, then I'm going to use Impregnable Wall, and now head towards the boss with Bernie equipped with a Devil Axe to lose HP. Constance is going to chase after her since I need to use Stride next turn. Now, Cyril is going to attack the Archer on the Ballista and safely get low thanks to Blessing. And finally, Claude is going to kill the Archer with Fallen Star. This will allow him to survive enemy phase and lure in one of the commanders. Acheron is also now going to show up, but he doesn't move immediately for some reason, so there's nothing to worry about there. Now I need to kill all 4 enemy commanders in 1 turn. To kill Ladislava, I need to stride Bernadetta and land a crit. For Acheron, Swift Strikes with Sylvain was enough, then for the last 2 generic paladins, I also needed to crit, with one getting defeated with Cyril and another dying to Claude using Fallen Star. This ends the map and moves me on to chapter 17. On this map, we fortunately only have to kill Edelgard and Dimitri. To do this, I split my team up into 2 separate squads, with one consisting of most of my flyers that ran to the left, and my other squad that ran southeast. Because only 2 units initially move here, it was pretty easy to set up my engages on Edelgard and Dimitri. With my western team preparing to place Bernadetta set up with Impregnable Wall in range to kill Edelgard next turn, and my team to the east just utilized the Blessing Gambit to get Cyril low on HP. After a turn passed, I could put my plan into action by striding with both of my teams and then using repositions and a shove to get Cyril in range to strike Dimitri. With Vengeance, he can actually one-shot Dimitri, and that's just what he did. Now I flew south with Bernie and crit with Vengeance to defeat Edelgard and finish this chapter. The next chapter, chapter 16, is extremely easy, as I just have to kill the Death Knight, which I can easily do by using Impregnable Wall and Stride to safely move Bernie up and get her down to low HP. Now I just had to use Stride again to fly over to the Death Knight and kill him in 1 shot with Vengeance. Moving on to chapter 19, I'm going to immediately use Impregnable Wall and Stride to position my team in this middle area here, which will safely bait out the Death Knight. On the left side of the map, I'm going to use Constance to draw back Cyril and then move away. Cyril will now reposition her to safety and end turn in range of a mage to get down to low HP. Next turn, Bernadetta can now one-shot the Death Knight with the Spear of Assault, and next Manuela can stand near the Opera House to give me a battalion with the Dance of the Goddess Gambit. Finally, I'm going to stride at Cyril and one-shot Hubert with Vengeance. On this next map, chapter 20, I'm going to win in 1 turn by simply buffing Bernadetta with Blessing, then I'm going to use Claude's personal skill to move past the enemies and open the door. Now, Bernadetta is going to attack into the warrior to get down to 1 HP, and Sylvain is going to use Dance of the Goddess to allow her to move again. With Stride to boost movement, this allows Bernie to run straight up to Edelgard and kill her with a critical hit. On chapter 21, I made a mistake with my preparations, as the last time I've played Golden Deer was literally my first ever playthrough of this game, so I didn't exactly remember a specific detail of the map, which we'll get to shortly. Okay, initially my plan was to use use Impregnable Wall to get Bernie low on HP and take on the mages. To the right side of the map, I deployed a small team that on this turn set up Blessing and gambited a mage so Byleth could kill them on enemy phase. Next turn, I used Bernie to one-shot one of the mages, and next turn I killed the other. This cleared the way for Byleth to move left. My plan now was to basically buff 3 units with Impregnable Wall, then sprint towards Falaise. This guarantees I'll survive enemy phase, and then next turn I can open the door to Falaise with Bernadetta and dance with Sylvain's Gambit. This is where I noticed that this plan doesn't work because Falaise has employed an anti-pass formation by standing next to 2 Swordmasters, which makes it impossible for me to beat him with just Bernadetta, so I had to reset and redo my preparations. Skipping ahead to the point just after I killed the mages, this time I used repositions to assassinate this sniper and move out of the nearby enemy's attack range, which partly cleared the way north. To fully clear a path for Claude to head south, I vengeanced one of the warriors and locked the other in place with Encloser. This cleared the way for Claude to reach the southern part of the map, and now, like I did before, I buffed with Impregnable Wall and moved some units in. Next turn, I opened the door to Falaise's room with Claude, then I used Stride and Reposition to send up Annette to rally Claude's strength, and danced 3 units with Sylvain. My plan initially here was to use Rewind to rig a crit on Falaise with Claude's Fallen Star. The odds this would happen were actually pretty low, so I ended up changing my plan to just crit the adjacent Swordmaster, because Claude had higher odds to kill them. This cleared the way for Bernadetta to attack Falaise and kill with a crit. Next up was the final chapter against Nemesis, so I prepared by cooking a lot of stat boosting meals and then headed for the final battle. Because I haven't played this map in a long time, I didn't initially know how the barrier part of Nemesis' personal skill worked, so at first I tried immediately rushing towards him on turn 1 and used Impregnable Wall to try to safely break his barrier. And what I figured out here is you have to both hit Nemesis to break the barrier, and you also have to deal at least 1 point of damage. So I needed a slightly better setup if I wanted to kill him. After thinking it over for a while, I came up with a plan that should bring me victory. Okay, so on turn 1, I'm going to attack the sniper with Warmaster Strike, then Bernie will attack, and Claude can finish them off thanks to Annette's rally strength and Blessing to make sure he lives. Before ending turn, I'm going to move my team around to get Cyril down to 1 HP and use Bolting to bait in one of the 10 elites. Next turn, I'll start by rallying Bernadetta's Dex, Strength, and Luck, then I'll use Stride, and thanks to the movement buff, I can kill the nearby elite and Canto near another elite. With Constance, I'm going to heal Cyril, and then Bernadetta will kill the elite with Vengeance. Next, I'm going to move Claude up, making a line of units so I can get good value with Impregnable Wall, and also get good value from the Dance of the Goddess Gambit to make my 4 units move again. In this position, Cyril was unable to reach Nemesis, so I needed to use some positional skills to get him in range, and with this setup, he can deal 1 point of damage to break his barrier and always live thanks to Impregnable Wall. With the barrier destroyed, Bernadetta could now move up and deal lethal damage with a Vengeance crit, allowing me to beat this challenge and finish the game. To summarize, this challenge is really weird because it sounds really hard on paper, but outside of the first 2 chapters, honestly, it isn't really that hard because generally speaking, this game is very easy to cheese. What was kind of interesting to learn with this run is some units can function quite well without stats, like Sylvain with a good lance, 1 rounds units for a surprisingly long amount of time. The most fun part of the game for me was the first 2 chapters, as they were actually difficult, and slowly figuring out how to beat them step by step was just fun to me. Of course, this is 3 houses, so the fun doesn't last that long, but at least I had an interesting experience across most of the game. And if you found this video interesting, tell me what you liked in the comments, like the video, and subscribe if you like these kinds of game challenge videos. Bye.